Good morning. My name is Jennifer Hutchins, and I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Association of Nonprofits, and I'm quite honored to bring this program to you this morning. We have representatives from Congresswoman Shelley Pingree's office, as well as Congressman Jared Golden's office, to talk to you as representatives of Maine nonprofits about the federal community project funding, commonly known as the Earmarks project. Without further ado, we have the honor of having Congresswoman Pingree with us this morning. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Congresswoman, to say a few words about this opportunity that's come up recently from Congress.
Well, thank you. Thank you for organizing this morning. And truly, it's my honor to be on with all of you. I can't say hello to everybody on the screen, but I see some wonderful familiar faces. So thank you for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for the great work that you do, and particularly during this extremely challenging year, for holding your organizations together, taking care of your staff, taking care of the people of Maine, doing all the wonderful work that so many of your organizations do. So we're here to support you and help you in any other way we can. And I'm just going to speak briefly because we have Evan Johnston on the phone, and I know Eric Cantor's on the phone too. So you're going to hear a little bit from both of our offices about how to use this process and how it can be helpful to you. We can no longer call it the earmark process. We call it community project funding, or community project, CPF, we'll call it from now on. But the goal is to reinstate some opportunities for members of Congress to request particular projects for their districts. As you probably remember, Congress was doing this up until about 10 years ago, and decided that there was too much chaos, a few scandals, and it was a good idea to shut it down. So now we're tiptoeing back into the water, trying to bring these projects back. We think it's particularly important for members of Congress to have that opportunity to specify things in their district that are particularly important, particularly useful, and not leave all of those decisions up to the federal branch. We think it's part of our separation of powers and in our duty, since the House has the power of the purse, so we consider it important. We're just starting this in a very limited way. Each member of Congress will have 10 projects. So you can imagine we could get 1,000 requests. So choosing those 10 projects will be really challenging for us and for every member of Congress. But we're going to do it with full transparency. People will be able to see the decisions that we make, and every project has to come from a government entity or a not-for-profit organizations. There'll be no for-profit entities allowed. It has to have broad community support. And it is a limited number of accounts that will be available. So unlike in the past, when actually virtually everything could be an earmark, we're going to just dip our toe in with some very limited requests. So that will make it challenging too, but it will also limit the number of requests that we're able to receive. As a member of the Appropriations Committee, I am excited that we are bringing this back. I think it's an important way for all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to feel fully engaged in the process. But I also know it's going to be an enormous amount of vetting and challenging decisions and just work to go through. But I think in the long run, that's particularly important. And I think after this year, and particularly with this very controlled process, we'll be able to expand it and add more accounts, add more numbers of projects, and just continue to keep this going in a way, again, that we hope is extremely transparent, that you can be very engaged in knowing what we're doing and how we're doing it. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to talk about, but again, we're here, and Representative Golden's office is here to offer you any background support. Evan's going to go through some slides to really give you a fuller picture of what's in there, but we're really happy to help you in any way. And if you have a good project that you'd like to submit for this year, the timeline is short, but really we are very anxious to hear from you. And if this isn't the right year, then we're happy to work with you to think about what would be the right project for next year. So I think that will be really important. One other item, because many of you access federal funding and are always interested to know what's in the budget with the new administration. It always takes a little bit longer to fully see what will be in the appropriations bill. So we expect to have some idea about what will be in there in early April, but won't know fully about the process probably till early May or late April. But then we'll work really quickly to get our appropriations bills done, and hopefully they will all be complete by the end of July. So also when that comes out, if you have thoughts or ideas for us or information you want us to know, we'll be working fast. Our committees will have hearings immediately. And again, we'll be anxious to hear from you. So thank you very much. I'm in Maine today. We're on recess, so I can say enjoy the rainy day. I know we need the rain in Maine, so it's always good once in a while to have a reason to be stuck inside and to hope that we see spring right around the corner. So thanks again. I'm glad to be with all of you, and I'll turn it back to Jen and just let you guys have a chance to hear more about it and ask your questions. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. And thank you again for your public service. We really, truly appreciate your leadership in Washington. And we also, I think I speak for my colleague, Sarah, as well. We really are grateful for you and your team being such great partners to Maine nonprofits, which we all know are truly at the center of strengthening Maine's communities. So thank you so much. Before I turn it over to Sarah, I wanted to just reassure everyone who's on the call today that this program is being recorded, and all of the resources that are going to be mentioned, the links, as well as the recording of this, will be available on the Maine Association of Nonprofits blog. So you will be able to access this easily through us, and you can always reach out to us if you're having any trouble accessing those. So without further ado, I'm introducing you to my colleague, Sarah Woodard. She's the Maine Association of Directors of Advocacy and Public Affairs, and she has been a rock star for this past year, bringing all of the latest news from Washington, D.C. and Augusta to make sure that we provide you, Maine nonprofits, with all the information you need with regards to our governments and how they can be supporting you. So Sarah, it's off to you.
Thank you so much, Jen. And again, we thank the Congresswoman for being here today. It is an honor. So I would like to first, I'm going to be introducing you to the congressional staff people who are going to really be the stars of this show. But I do want to mention that after they give a little bit of a presentation and share some of the information, I'm going to be going through the chat box and taking questions from there and asking these folks. So we're not going to have folks pop up on the screen and ask live. I'm going to handle that process. But I will say also that we're not going to be able to get to all of those questions today, but we will share them with these folks later on, and we'll try to get those answers to you later. And like Jen said, we are going to have a blog, actually, I just published it, that already has some information from Congresswoman Pingree's office. There will be more information forthcoming from Congressman Golden's office, and we will also have a recording of this webinar. So first, I'd like to introduce you to Jesse Connolly, who is the Chief of Staff at the office of Congresswoman Shelley Pingree. He's been with Shelley Pingree for a long, long time, and he's also a trusted person with the nonprofit sector. His wife has worked for a nonprofit for many years now. Also, Evan Johnston is with us. She's the legislative director for Shelley Pingree's office. She's also been in that office for a long time, starting out, I believe, as an intern for a campaign long ago. So thank you. Also, let's see, is Kimber with us today? Has she joined us? So Kimber Colton is also with us today. Kimber has been a longtime counsel to the Congresswoman. Finally, we have from Congressman Golden's office, Eric Cantor. Eric is a great resource to the Maine Association of Nonprofits. He is here as legislative director from Congressman Golden's office. And I'm going to start with you, Evan. You are going to share some slides and share some resources about the Earmarks program, and then we will move it on to Eric in Congressman Golden's office, and then we'll open things up to Q&A. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you all so much for joining. As Shelley said, we're really pleased to have the opportunity to connect with all of you. I know I met many of you in the past, so good to see your names on the screen there. So I think one thing that Sarah and Jen said would be helpful is if we kind of set the table for what is community project funding, right? It's certainly a complicated concept. So hopefully I can help answer some of those more basic questions. I'll move on to our office process as the Pingree office, and then we'll turn it over to Eric to talk a little bit about their process in Congressman Golden's office. So, Kelly, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. I don't know if there's anything we can. Great. Okay, perfect. All right. So put together some slides just to make this hopefully a little easier for everyone. So as Sarah said, I'm the Congresswoman's legislative director, which means I've been helping to put all of these details together for us. It's been a fairly short timeline for us too, so bear with us. If you have any questions that we don't know the answers to right off the bat, we'll get right back to you. So what is community project funding? You may know it better as earmarks. They've existed in some form or another since the first Congress, were quite common in the 90s and aughts, but after some abuses, as Shelley said, they've been prohibited since 2011. Since 2011, Congress has been limited to setting the overall funding amount for a federal program, with some parameters and guidance on intended use, but the process of selecting recipients of funds has been left almost entirely to the executive branch. Starting again this year, Congress now has the opportunity to supplement the executive branch's grant-making process by identifying and writing into law a select number of specific projects that will receive program funds. So here is an example. You may be familiar with the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Rural Community Facilities Program. It provides loans and grants to purchase, construct, and improve community facilities like medical clinics, childcare centers, public safety buildings in rural areas. So last year and years before that, Congress appropriated $74 million to the program. Then it was up to USDA to solicit and evaluate proposals and select grantees. One example from Maine is Children's Discovery Museum in Waterville. They were recently selected as a grantee under USDA's process. They met all the statutory requirements of the program, wrote a successful proposal, and now can use those funds to help purchase and renovate the new location of their museum. So under this new process, the Rural Community Facilities Program is eligible for community project funding. So that means that members of Congress will be able to identify projects in their district that can receive funding from the RCAP program without going through the federal grant-making process. As long as they still meet the statutory requirements of the program, they'll be able to circumvent the RFP process and receive funds. So we're very pleased to have this opportunity again. I think it will be a helpful sort of opportunity for projects in the state that we know are high priority, that have a lot of community support. I want to be clear, as Shelley was, it does come with some limitations. The House is committed to transparency, accountability measures, We really want to make sure that we get this right so that we're able to keep it in place for years to come and hopefully expand. As Shelley said, only a limited number of federal programs will be eligible. RCAP is one of them, along with a few dozen more kind of spread across the federal government. We have a list of these accounts in our materials that Sarah shared as part of that blog that you may want to take a look through. The toughest requirement for us is going to be that each member can only submit 10 total requests across federal government programs. So as Shelley said, this is going to put us in a tough place. We're likely going to have a lot of very worthy, very important projects that we're not going to be able to select. But we're committed to having an open process here. We want to hear from you. We want to make sure that you're in a position to submit a strong request if you have a project in mind. So, eligibility. These are kind of the top line eligibility requirements here. With so many requests probably coming into us, we're likely to be pretty strict about considering from a pool of projects that we know are going to be eligible. The requester must be a unit of government or a 501c3 nonprofit organization. You may, and maybe in some cases should consider developing a request as a coalition, but there does need to be one lead requester. Each project must meet the statutory requirement of the federal program, including matching requirements in some cases. This will vary by account, and we can help point you in the right direction if you have questions about that. Each project should generally be aware that funds are intended to be used in fiscal year 22. Since appropriations is an annual process, the intent is for the funds to be obligated within the year for whatever project you have in mind. I know that can get complicated based on whether it's a bricks and mortar project or programming. Again, we're happy to talk through your specific questions. And then the final kind of major requirement to keep in mind is community support. So Shelley mentioned this a little bit. This is an important new requirement from the committee. Projects will need to show that they have community backing in order to ensure, this isn't the pet project of a member or coming out of nowhere. They really want to make sure that when they vet these projects, they're selecting projects that are going to have an impact in the community and the community agrees is necessary. So we have suggestions of ways to show this in our materials, again on the blog, but they can include support letters from elected officials, press articles, town council resolutions, listing of the project on state or local planning documents. So again, a fuller list is in our materials, but let us know if you have any specific questions. Okay, so the Pingree office's request process. First, we're gonna want you to determine your eligibility. That'll include looking through available accounts and determining whether your project is maybe a fit for one of them. Recognize that some of them are pretty broad. So, again, I'm a broken record here, but if you have questions, feel free to ask if you think that your project might be in a gray area. So once you've determined that you as an entity and your organization might be a fit, we're going to need you to gather a fair amount of documentation. I promise that these are requirements from the committee, not from us. So the committee will require a fair amount of information, including information about your organization, a description of the project, justification for use of federal dollars, and detailed information about the project's budget. Specific specific accounts may also ask for more detailed questions. And that leads me to this next box here. We have a form on our website, link in the next slide, that you can access, take a look at, see what kind of questions are going to be asked for the account that you're interested in. While you think through how to fill out that form. Our deadline for the office is April 19th at the end of the day. So we know that's going to be tough. Unfortunately, that is, a requirement put on us by the committee. As an office, we'll only have, a few days after that in order to do our own vetting and decide which 10 projects we're going to be submitting. Wanted to provide a couple other examples of past earmarks from Maine nonprofits. So just want to make sure you have a look there. A very common request or question that we get is, how much money can I request as part of these? So while that is going to vary based on the account that we're looking at, I would say that the average project over the years has been between around 200,000 and $1 million. We're not talking huge dollars here. While, there are certainly cases where we could go over $1 million, just want you to be cognizant that that's going to be probably less likely to be selected than some smaller projects on the committee's part. So again, as always, if you have a bigger project and you want to talk it through with us before requesting, you should feel free. But I think these examples do give a good overview of the different kinds of organizations that can request and kind of the breadth of projects that might be covered under what we're able to do. So questions, I know you'll have them. We'll have a Q&A session once we're wrapped up with all of our talking. If you have a more specific question about your organization or a potential project, I would suggest sending an email to our office. This email address here is just for CPF related inquiries. We'll field them out to the right staffer in our office to answer your question, and perhaps best to start with our website, which has a lot of the information that I talked about here, a guide with more specific information, a list of eligible accounts, and our form. So I think that's enough talking from me. So I will now turn it back over to Sarah. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much. That was really helpful. I don't suppose we might be able to get those slides as well. Is that a possibility? That would be great. Thank you. I'm going to pass it over now to Eric Cantor in the office of Congressman Jared Golden.
Well, thanks, Sarah, and thanks to everyone for joining this call. I'm sure I've met some of you, but if not, my name's Eric Cantor. I'm Congressman Golden's legislative director based out in DC. Hard to follow up on a PowerPoint presentation, so you'll just have to bear with looking at my face while I talk through what our process will look like. I will start just right off the bat for folks to be aware. I think I saw this question pop up in the chat. Our office deadline for all submissions is going to be April 14th, close of business. So a bit earlier than the Pingree folks. One of the reasons being this is for both the congressman and for all of our staff. This is our first go around at this process. So we want to make sure we give ourselves and folks who are interested in applying ample space on the front end to set themselves up for success in the process. So just quickly, I will go through what our process looks like. And we just finalized our materials, which I passed along to Sarah at the end of the day yesterday. So hopefully she'll be able to put all of this information up on the blog today. And hopefully all of our material will be up on our website by the end of day today as well. So I would point you in that direction as you begin the process of applying. So we have sort of a 5-step process for our office. I think the first would be to review what we're calling a community project funding guidance document. So I know Congresswoman Pingree's office has the same thing. This is a menu of all of the different programs that are eligible for earmark community project funding. I can't stress enough how important it is to familiarize yourselves with those programs and what the eligibility requirements are. Our guidance document also has a list of the kinds of specific questions that the Appropriations Committee is looking for. Each program, each subcommittee is asking for specific things, different things. So really important that you are aware of what those are. The next step, once you've read through that document and feel like you have a compelling or strong project that would be eligible for community project funding, we ask that everyone contact their district representative in one of our 3 district offices. And we've broken down who those contact folks are by county. So, and again, all of our guidance documents and the material on our website will have our district office contact information. I would contact your district rep and talk with them about your project, your proposal, just so that they are aware and they can perhaps answer initial questions you might have, and get you going on the next step, which is step 3, collecting and assembling community support materials. As Evan mentioned, the projects must demonstrate community support, and we will be prioritizing those projects that have demonstrated strong community support through resolutions, letters to the editors, articles, all those kinds of things. And then our 4th step, once you've presented all of those materials, or gathered all those materials, and you feel like you are ready to apply, we ask that you fill out a form through Google Forms, which will, all of those links will also be on our website. Each subcommittee is going to have its own form because, as I mentioned, each committee, each program requires its own set of specific questions. And once you've filled out that form, we will then ask you to email all of the supporting documentation that you've collected to our community project funding email address, which I will share in the group chat, and will also, again, be on our website. That is our process in a nutshell, and I will turn it back over to Sarah, and happy to answer any questions.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Eric. That's great. So I will just say before we move on to the question and answer period is that we received a number of questions via email prior to this webinar, and a lot of them were around the parameters of who can apply and who can't, and specifically what sorts of subsector organizations, like can historical societies apply, can performing arts folks apply? Can summer camps apply? Can both you and Evan answer that question for me a little bit? How should folks find out more about that specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that as long as you meet the 501c3 requirement, I'm not aware of any other kind of broad requirements from the Appropriations Committee. Again, each account maybe is tailored to different kinds of applicants. So, for example, there are a couple that are, you know, intended for and best suited to, you know, local units of government. But outside of that broad 501c3, I think that any organization should feel free to request if there's a project that's a fit.
Yeah, I agree with Evan, and from our perspective, our office perspective, that's why I strongly encourage folks, once they've reviewed the guidance, background material, and all the accounts, to reach out to our district offices, who can then, I think, work with you and answer some of those questions regarding eligibility or clarifying questions about other components of the program.
Great, thank you both. I have some questions that came ahead of today's webinar. I'd like to ask, actually, Lisa Pullman from the Natural Resources Council of Maine has asked a couple of really great questions, one of which is right here in the chat box. Is it okay if you have community support, but not all community support? Because some projects are a little bit more controversial than others.
I can jump in on that one, Ev, if you want. Thanks, Sarah. So I think the committee is looking for projects that have a broad breadth of support. So some of the things we've talked about are letters of support from local town officials. Town councils might pass a resolution of support. So, you know, Lisa, if it's a controversial project and someone might be against it, I don't think there's a reason to not submit it to at least our office. I don't want to speak for Eric, but you know, we're going to look for those backup materials which the committee is requiring to make sure that this is something that's been vetted thoroughly throughout the committee, throughout the community. And if there's a little bit of controversy, you know, that happens quite frequently sometimes with federal funding projects. So, you know, it's not a disqualifier.
Great.
I would, oh, sorry, just if I could jump in, Sarah, I would agree with Jesse, and I would just preface and remind folks again that we can only submit 10 project proposals per office. So if there are, you know, if we get, just an example, 12 project applications, and 10 of them have unanimous support from their communities, and then there are 2 that may be more controversial, some do have support and some don't, I think we would be much more inclined to push the projects that have unanimous support, because we only get 10, and of those 10, we may not even get funding for all of those. So I would just caution that this is a highly selective process. And so I think the projects that have more unanimous support make the stronger candidates.
Great, terrific, thank you. I have a couple of process questions. One, is there a more formal process after your office submits a proposal, one of your 10? And also, will all 10 be funded? So what does it look like after you folks submit your 10 proposals?
That's a great question. So the insight that we have is, once, this is kind of a 2-tiered vetting process, right? The first phase will be in our offices. We want to make sure that the 10 that we're submitting are complete, quality, and are likely to be funded. And then committee staff will survey our requests, do an additional round of vetting. There may be additional questions from committee staff once they have a chance to take a look at the projects. We're not aware of any kind of formal interview process or anything like that. But just to keep in mind that there may be an opportunity to follow up. There also may be, an opportunity if for whatever reason you have another example of community support, always helpful to share with us, and we can then share with the committee to supplement their vetting efforts. And then, as Shelley said, we'll get working on our writing our appropriations bills, which would incorporate projects selected for community project funding. And those usually will come out, well, this year those will come out around, early midsummer, and then we will vote on them in the House later in the summer, early in the fall. That actually speaks to a good part of this process that I did not cover, which is that we do not know at this point what the Senate process is going to be. I think, and I don't want to speak for the senators here, but what we've heard is that the Senate would like to move forward with a similar process. They just haven't ironed out all their details yet. So, there are a lot of variables there. Don't necessarily know how they will structure their requests. Each senator may have more requests. They may have more or different accounts to choose from. But given that our deadlines are so soon, we wanted to get all of this information out to you all now. And then, hopefully we'll know a little bit more, and the senators will be able to share more about their process shortly. And then, sorry, I think your second question was, will all of our projects be funded? And the answer is that there's no guarantee, even of the 10 that we send in. We can't guarantee that those will be funded. I think that that makes it incumbent on us to make sure that we're submitting, the highest quality submission, requests that we get in order to boost our chances of getting as many of our requests funded as possible. I think the committee has every intention of funding as many good projects as they can. We're not looking at, only a certain number of projects may be funded in this account, for example. It's a little bit more flexible than that.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that really comprehensive answer. That's really great. And you answered another question that a lot of folks have, which is, what is the Senate process? And not what the Senate process is, because they haven't voted on it yet, but what's the likelihood that we're going to see a Senate earmark? Like when the vote might be. I know that there's a lot of questions whether or not they will approve earmarks in that chamber. Does anybody want to talk to that, or have we spoken about as much as we want to, because nobody can really speak for the Senate? Let's move on.
No, Sarah, I'm happy to sort of add into that.
Okay, great.
The short answer is, to Evan's point, we don't know. We are very hopeful. The chatter on the Hill seems positive, but I don't want to speak for Eric, but we don't want to speak for the Senate, right? So, but I do think the goal here, and at least our goal, is to work with the Senate delegation offices in Maine if we end up having a process on the Senate side. So, we have few numbers, as we've all highlighted here, but our hope is that we could, if for whatever reason in the first district we get, more than 10, which I'm assuming we will be, we'll definitely make sure to pass those along to the Senate staffs which projects we think are, very well qualified as well. And obviously they'll have their own process, but it's really hard to sort of read the tea leaves on where the Senate is going to be, but we're fingers crossed. It looks like, our hope is that a similar process will be announced shortly on how the Senate's going to deal with this new earmark provisions.
Great, thank you for tackling that. I appreciate it. Here's a couple of more questions that are really interesting. They're all interesting, frankly. These are all great questions. If somebody has a statewide project, do they apply to both district offices?
I would say you're certainly welcome to. I think both Congresswoman Pingree and Congressman Golden are committed to coordinating on our ultimate requests, at least sharing what we're both intending to put forward. So, I think there would be unlikely to be overlap between our final requests, just to make sure we're covering as many potential good projects as we can. But that said, again, probably going to get a lot of great requests. So something that may fit into our 10 just may not fit into Congressman Golden's 10. So it doesn't hurt to apply to both of us if there is impact in both districts.
Great. Another question that I've gotten framed in different ways is, are there particular projects that that Congresswoman Pingree would focus on, would more likely approve, and on the other side that Jared Golden's office might be interested in approving?
We're open to all projects. We're not going in with a certain specific few projects in mind. Shelley's goal to us was, even though we only have 10 slots, to make this as available to as many folks as possible, but defer to Eric, but we're not going in with any sort of preconceived notions of this project or that project, or something in York County versus something in Saginaw County. We're waiting to see what comes in, and we'll make our decisions after that. Defer to Eric though.
Yep. Did we lose Eric there for a moment, or is it just me?
Eric, I think your audio may have cut out.
Yeah, can't hear you there, Eric. We're going to move along, Eric. He's going to try to tackle that tech issue. So another question that I thought was useful to answer was about whether or not this is a loan or a grant.
That's a good question as well, and recognize I used an example of a program that does have grants and loans, but I believe this would be a grant.
Great, thank you. Is the funding pool for CPF, in addition to the program funding, appropriation, or part of the overall program funding? Yeah, Jesse, you want to take that? You're nodding your head.
No, Evan knows this way better than I do, so I'm nodding yes, but Evan can explain it much better.
So if I understand the question correctly, it will depend based on the account. So some accounts will include earmarks within its existing program funding pool, and then others will have a separate add-on with funds just for CPFs. Do we think that answers the question?
If the person who asked that question wants to pop in the box, if that answered or not, that would be handy. It works for me.
It also, and I just want to say, these supplement the existing grant making process. It does not supplant. So there would still be, you know, your regular annual or, you know, whatever the structure of the grant. There would still be an RFP process in addition to any projects that get selected for CP.
Great. Yeah, and that's one of the questions that's still outstanding. So thank you for tackling that. Are national projects based in Maine eligible?
I mean, I guess I would say we'd probably want to tackle that on a case-by-case basis. You know, I'm not sure that it wouldn't be eligible.
Yeah, Sarah, what's the question or mean by a national project?
That's an
National impact, Jesse. You know, if you're housed here in Maine, sorry to jump in, Sarah. I was it's just we have lots of organizations that are based here in Maine, but their mission and their impact is national and even international.
Got it. I mean, Evan, Kimber, Eric, I mean, I think we would obviously look at those projects if they're headquartered here in Maine. There's no reason they wouldn't be, as long as they fit into a line, eligible to apply. You know, as long as they fit the 501c3 and could look at a funding stream that was earmark appropriate. I don't see why they couldn't apply.
Okay.
Yes, and in past years, that has been the case, that there have been these national projects that have gotten earmark funding before. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kimber. This question I think has come up by a couple of different folks. Is there a rubric or some sort of public criteria that folks will be able to see that you'll be using?
Can you guys hear me now? Okay. I think that's like the $1 million question, and the answer is no. We don't have like a formula or a rubric. The reason being, I think we're anticipating getting all sorts of different kinds of projects that do all sorts of different things. So it's hard to compare. It would be an apples and oranges comparison, I think, in many instances. So I think the short answer is no. For us, it's really about projects that demonstrate strong community support. And I can't say strong community support more, because that really is, as has been impressed upon by the Appropriations Committee to us, the number one criteria for whether or not projects will ultimately be funded.
Sarah, one add-on to that from Eric, and Evan mentioned this, but everything that any member of Congress submits to the Appropriations Committee, the specific request has to be posted publicly on the individual member's website. So everyone will be able to see the 10 projects that we've put forward, Representative Golden's 10 projects, and every other member in the House, all 10 of their projects will be posted on each individual member's website. So folks can see which 10 we've selected for at least the first step in the process.
Great, thank you very much.
And if I could just add one more thing, hopefully this is a process that isn't just for this year, that it will happen in subsequent years. So if your project isn't selected this year, does not mean that you couldn't apply and qualify in subsequent years. So I know our office is more than happy to work with folks who applied and maybe their project didn't get into our 10 that we submitted, and see if there are ways that we can work together so that you're in a stronger position next year.
Yeah, great point. Thank you. Does a project have a higher likelihood of getting funded if it's done in partnership with another nonprofit or governmental entity? In other words, what's the value that you folks will place on sort of a community partnership? Do you have any sense of that at this point?
Yeah, and Kimber, please jump in on this one. I know Kimber's been doing some thinking about this. So I think that for us, it's definitely a point in a project's favor to know that it has, kind of a coalition of support, in part because I think that inherently starts to meet the community support standard, is, having a bunch of different organizations coming together and saying, this is our need, I think is valuable for us, certainly.
And I would I would double up on what Evan just said and definitely agree with that, and think that it does help also for us internally, but also for the committee to see, like Evan is saying, that the community support part is such a really stressed area with the committee itself this round, to have that kind of level of interest across organizations or municipalities definitely would help, even with the committee, to see that that box has been checked.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are tribes eligible? Yes, terrific. Do you want to say anything on that? We're just going to say yes. We encourage you to apply.
Yeah, I mean, like any of the accounts, it just will depend on eligibility, and some accounts are better suited to units of government than others. So, it just depend on the account, but yes, the tribes are certainly eligible to apply broadly.
Terrific, great, thank you. I've gotten this question in various forms. What sort of help will you folks be offering the nonprofits who are interested? Yeah, I'm just gonna throw that out there.
So we're happy to answer as many questions as we can. Obviously we're not grant writers, we have small staffs. So I think view us as technical question help. If you have a question about an account, that might be, trying to understand if the project might be eligible, we'll help you in that. We'll help make sure you have the right materials, but we're not going to be submitting or helping you draft the proposal, but please view us as technical experts to help you as questions come up along the way.
Okay, great. And along those lines, if an organization does not get approved for funding, will you be providing some sort of feedback for the future?
Sure.
They can
Absolutely. Yep.
Great.
Yep. I mean, that's our biggest, concern, or just reality of this program, I think, is that we are going to have way more than 10 absolutely qualified projects per district. And that's going to be the hardest part, is saying no to so many well-qualified folks. But we still want people to put forth an application, even if it takes a lot of time and effort, because I think, as Eric said, if it does not get into this round, our hope is that the program will grow next year. And, we want to continue to work with the nonprofits that put forward those applications that weren't successful, to continue to push for them in the coming years.
Great. Thank you.
One thing just to follow up with Jesse on that is that, beyond just the fact that they may allow in future years us to do more than 10 projects, they also might change the types of projects or programs that are eligible for this funding. And so maybe something that doesn't really fit perfectly into a slot this year, maybe in a future year, there will be an account that's a much better fit. So that's also a possibility as we go forward, that we'll see some of that change depending on how things go this year.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for a couple of more questions. One is a small project that only needs $50,000 or so. Is that also competitive as well as eligible?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. And is there some sort of list of the federal programs that are eligible for CPF? Is that going to be made available?
That is a part of our materials that we shared, with a brief description of each account. So yes, and it's on our website too.
Great. So when you say accounts, that's really what you're referring to.
Sorry.
No, I'm just clarifying for everyone else as well. Yeah. Let's see. I think maybe we have one more time for one more question. This was the follow-up question from Lisa at Natural Resources Council of Maine. She says, Maine has adopted a state climate action plan that includes recommendations and action steps for addressing climate change here in Maine. But as you know, states need policy action and resources from the federal government to be most successful in achieving our pollution reduction goals. Can you describe what, if any, community project funding projects you have identified that will best assist Maine in making the needed progress on climate action? And how can nonprofits and community partners help identify these opportunities for your offices? It's a good question to wrap things up with.
A good question. I mean, I would just start, and everybody else feel free to jump in. I would just start by saying that, you know, we are not coming into this project or this process with like pre-identified projects of interest for us. We're looking forward to seeing what the community, you know, submits to our office. We have all been in touch with the governor's office, with Hannah Pingree's office. They're definitely starting to think through, you know, how the state's priorities might fit as a part of the opportunities available through these accounts. And I would encourage any organizations that want to think through those opportunities with the state to reach out to them. And just know, you know, we're coordinating on the other end too. So I think that's where I would leave things, but feel free to jump in, everyone.
I'm muted. Again, for any of the questions that did not get answered today, we'll try following back up with you folks at another time. And again, we're going to have a blog with all this great information and a recording of this webinar. I thank you all so much for your time today. I'm going to pass things back over to Jennifer Hutchins.
Yeah, thank you all. I'm just going to echo what's being said in the chat. A lot of gratitude to your two offices for shedding some transparency and light onto what in the past has either real or perceived been a little bit more opaque process. So yeah. Thank you all. And we are going to, this has been recorded, and we will be making it available via our blog. And as we get more information from either office, we will be sharing that on our blog. So always check back with us. You can always reach out to MAMP. All of our information is available on our website. And with that, we're going to say have a happy Friday, have a good weekend, and thank you again for everyone who participated today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.